My next guest tonight co-star as J.R.R. Tolkien and his wife Edith in the new movie Tolkien.
Tell me a story. In any language you want.
Don't be ridiculous.
The legend of Celebs.
I'm not a performing monkey.
It begins with the arrival of a proud and opinionated princess.
Yes, you're right about that.
She demands entertainment. Princess Celebs is bored. Bored of cakes and muffins and exquisite china. She longs for another life.
It's not a name.
What?
Something else. Celebs. It's not a princess's name. It can't be. Celebs is a place.
Please welcome Nicholas Hoult and Lily Collins. Well, thank you both for being here.
Thank you for having us.
I am particularly excited to talk to you because of the movie that you're here to promote, Tolkien. As you may know, and the audience may know, I'm a particular fan of the Professor.
You've been described to us as a mega fan.
I am.
So we've both been panicking backstage that you might show us up as frauds.
Research.
No, not at all. I'm entirely nervous because I'm so excited to talk to you about this movie.
Well, we're not actually Edith and Tolkien.
I know this. I know this. I know this. But what I love about it is that we get to learn something about the Professor's life in this movie. Describe to the people out there what part of Tolkien's life we're learning about here, and Edith's life.
It's his formative years. Essentially, it's the build-up to him writing The Hobbit. He was orphaned at a young age, and it's about him finding friendship, fellowship, and love with Edith, and then his experiences during World War I, and his love of language as well, because that's where all his stories kind of stemmed from.
And he learned that he got that from his mother, who also, she also died when he was quite young, but she introduced him and his brother into myths and legends, that sort of thing, and taught him languages. And Edith and Tolkien they sort of grew up together, didn't they?
They did. I actually didn't know much about Tolkien before I started the project, unfortunately, and there's not much research to be done on Edith, but I found out that Edith was also an orphan and they lived in the same house together. So they were first and foremost these steadfast friends and each other's kind of confidant and source of escapism, and then became each other's one and only loves throughout their lives until their 80s.
What did you know about Tolkien's works before doing this movie?
I was a huge fan of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. I love magic and fantasy, and I had actually ironically auditioned for, I think it was Evangeline Lilly's role in The Hobbit as an elven character.
Tauriel.
Yes. Okay. And I don't even think it ever even made it to Peter Jackson. It was awful. But then years later, ironically, I ended up playing the woman who inspired that character. So.
And how about Nicholas? Did you know Tolkien's work at all?
I got given The Hobbit on the set of About a Boy by the Whites brothers, the directors of that. So I read it then, and I still have that copy of the book at home, so I kind of went back and read over it, so it felt quite fortuitous.
That's actually one thing that I had forgotten before I was reading the pre-interview with you guys tonight with my producer. And wait, he's the same guy from About a Boy? I didn't realize that was you.
Same guy.
It's a great, look at you in About a Boy.
I'm on the right.
Right there.
On the left
this
is
guy
Hugh
right
Grant.
there. Right there. You,
Literally the cutest.
I think I speak for several of the women on my staff when I say you filled out nicely. There you go. No, I have a bit of an exclusive, deep-cut nerd photograph here. Can you explain before I show it to people what's happening here? You're preparing to play the Professor here.
Yeah, so essentially we're filming X-Men in the build-up to filming Tolkien. And to get into roles, I read his letters, I read his books, I read biographies, everything I can, and then there's certain elements that you just kind of try things out and see if it helps, like, subconsciously influence the character. So he did all his own illustrations for his books and maps and everything. So I started trying to do watercolors in downtime on X-Men. So here is me doing a watercolor in amongst a massive action battle that's going on outside this little tent I'm in.
Doing the watercolor in his style, it looks like.
I'm trying
here.
to, yeah, my best.
And here you are, still in costume, preparing to be Tolkien.
There it is.
Hey, no, are you guys? There's this movie is taking a very firm stance on how to pronounce the professor's name.
I wasn't going to call you out on it, but you have already said Tolkien a couple times.
I've said Tolkien. I grew up saying Tolkien.
No, but it's fine. Everywhere around the world. We both were even saying Tolkien on the set. We were just in England, and people were saying Tolkien still. They were like refused to say Tolkien because it sounds a bit too posh or proper, but it is how you say it.
But it's properly Tolkien?
Yeah.
Tolkien is the correct pronunciation. And it was something that I was shocked by, and I was like, I'm playing this guy. I need to make sure I can do this. So I'd listened to Judi Dench. Did the voiceover for one of the documentaries about him, and she definitely says Tolkien throughout. So I was like, okay, Judy, I'm following you. Sticking with it.
She set the tone, yeah.
I think the problem when I was a kid is that I read Tolkien, but there was no one to talk to about it.
Tolkien.
I can't, sorry. Sorry.
I feel like you're taking the Mickey now.
No, not at all. I also read, people who read Tolkien, also read a lot of science fiction, generally, same group. And so it was Robert Heinlein and J.R.R. Tolkien. I think it was spelled the same way, and that's why we did it.
Right.
Yeah. There's almost like a biblical aspect to their relationship, that Tolkien wasn't allowed to see Edith by the priest that raised him and his brother, saying, it was sort of like, you have to go make something of yourself first?
Well, essentially, yeah, he had a lot put on him, a lot of weight on his shoulders from a young age because of his parents passing. So he had to kind of, get a good job, be able to provide and all those sorts of things, get to Oxford and graduate. So unfortunately, they were kind of kept apart. But you tell a very good story about the kind of hand, because she was engaged to someone else.
She didn't wait.
Yeah, so, well, I think she was a woman of little prospects, and at that time, if you were...
Also an orphan, right?
Also an orphan. She didn't have many job prospects, and if you were a woman of a certain age and you weren't promised to someone, it just didn't look good. So when he went off to school, she promised herself to someone else, and when she came back to send Tolkien off to war, she was still promised to someone else, but it was undeniable how much they loved one another, and so she ultimately ends up with Tolkien, but we didn't show it in the movie, but what is said to be true is that her fiance at the time, George, kind of gathered all three together and they sat and had tea, and he kind of just handed her off to Tolkien. Very modern, right? I mean, when would that ever happen?
Wow.
But yeah, it was very civilized. I think he realized that they just were meant to be, and I don't know, I can't say I'd do the same thing, but they ended up together, and it was lovely.
Tolkien opens in theaters next Friday, but if you want to see a special advance screening on May 7th, I am interviewing these lovely people and the director at the Montclair Film Festival. It's being simulcast to 200 different theaters. You can go online to find out a theater near you. Nicholas Hoult and Lily Collins, everybody. We'll be right back with a performance by sweet baby James Taylor.